Good afternoon. Hello, hello.
Yeah, it's on now.
Good afternoon, everybody. Are we good? Hi. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Clap your hands once if you can hear me. Clap your hands twice. Oh my God, you guys are a lot better than my Gen Z students that I teach. You guys listen. Now the key is to see if you actually continue to listen and pay attention, right? Anyways, welcome to our session. Before we get started, we're actually going to start with a healing and awakening session. I would love if everyone can put all technology to the side, your phones, your pens, your paper, all were forms of technology at one point in our lovely world. And Sundari is going to do a nice healing and awakening session for us so that we can all tune in and really be present.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Wait, there's more than 2 people in this room. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Now that's what I'm talking about. It's about energy, right? It's really all about our energy in this room. If you all can please rise from your seat, open body. Open body, what I mean by that is, you can open your legs, open your arms, try to get your arms out of your pockets, out of your hair. Try not to be distracted. This is all about you. Really about you. You can play the music. Right? Take a moment to close your eyes for me, please. Join me in closing your eyes. And breathe in once. And let it go. Breathe in twice. And let it go. Breathe in 3rd time. And hold it, and let it go. As you look around the room, I want you to look at the person next to you. Look at the person next to you. If you did not know them before you came in this room, touch them and say hello. Touch and say hello. Say hello. Say hello. All right. Now, at this moment in time, I want you to take your arms. I want you to reflect on how you came in here this afternoon. Were you nervous? Was your heart still? Did you know the person next to you or across from you? This is about connecting, right? This is about building relationship. This is really about bringing unity in this room, right? At this moment in time, I want to take your right hand and place it over your heart and try to feel your own heartbeat. Try to feel your own heartbeat. Is that heartbeat racing? Is it racing because of nerve? Is it calm because you're feeling at peace? Is it getting stronger because of anxiety? Of the unknown, what's going to happen in this room today? Or the stories you're going to hear that is going to impact you and the future and the community that you're coming from? And I hope that you're going to take these stories back and enrich the lives that we're going to be touching as you go back home with all of our panelists. I thank you for this moment. I want to say breathe in one more time. And before we go, I want to acknowledge the land that we're on. I want to acknowledge the people that are in this room. Many of them came here before us. This land wasn't ours, and we're inhabiting someone else's land as immigrants of this country, right? So let's remember that as we go forward, right? Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I'm really excited that there's a lack of seats because that means people actually want to be here. My name is Deepthi Sharma. I am a serial entrepreneur. I'm a community builder. And I'm someone that loves telling stories. I was born and brought up in Queens, New York. We have lots of Queens representation here. I don't know if there's anybody else from Queens, but there's two at least, and we rule the world. But we really do, right? Queens, New York. Oh, there we go. There we go. Speak louder? Oh, wow. Okay.
Words that have never been said to us before.
Yeah, words that have never. Okay, is this loud enough? Because I feel like I don't want to like hurt the people's ears up here. But this is as close to my mouth as I feel comfortable getting to this mic. But with that being said, I'm born and brought up in Queens, New York. And why I bring that point up is that it is one of the most diverse places in the world. You can walk down Roosevelt Avenue, find food from all over the world. You can hear different languages that you've probably never even heard of. And the beauty of it is that we all coexist. We coexist, we are inclusive, we empower each other, and it's a really exciting place to be. So I am very honored to be able to moderate this panel on storytelling and narratives. I think one of the most important things that as immigrants or children of immigrants that we're constantly told is our stories are sometimes told to us. They're told by other people, and we're always told how we should live, how we should, kind of just exist. And each of these panelists has chosen different forms of medium to tell stories and narratives from their own perspectives and experiences. And what I think is so beautiful about that is they're not waiting for somebody else to do it. They're telling and talking about romance and Diwali and being Indo-Caribbean and talking about genocide and talking about all the things that are essential and important to our communities. So with that, first of all, thank you for trusting me to tell and navigate this conversation, but I would love for all of you to introduce yourselves, and then we're going to kick it out from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Deepthi. Let's give it up for Deepthi. She's the best. Thank you so much. Y'all, my name is Rocky Merchandani, Queens, New York. First place my mom ever put her foot down when she took that airplane from Bombay. So an important place, I think, in the diaspora for a lot of us. I'm a storyteller. I'm an author. I write books for children. I've written some books. I put them on a slide somewhere. I don't know if you have them. If you do,
I will, yes.
Whatever.
Keep talking.
We'll get there eventually. I didn't set out to be a children's book author. I was a journalist for a very long time at the New York Post and the Daily News and Elle and lots of other places, and I told other people's stories for a living. And I loved telling your stories for a living. What I never thought about was telling my own story, and it wasn't until I had my daughter that I realized that I had never taken a minute to think about the stories that were missing in the world. And the stories that were missing for children were our stories, the stories of our families and of our grandparents and of how we got here. And so these days I spend a lot of my time writing books for our kids. I hope that you will get a chance to see some of these books, and I hope that our kids realize that, man, main character energy, it's who we are. So tell your stories, y'all.
I'm not really sure how I'm supposed to follow an introduction like that, but my name is Anika Sharma. I am an author of rom-coms and middle grade fiction starring South Asians. I'm also the exited founder of That Desi Spark, and I am the director of communications at New York's oldest and largest youth mental health services nonprofit. I started writing in 2015. I have a healthcare background, like probably 96% of the people at this summit, and it has been an extraordinary journey over the last 10 years or so, leaning into creativity, leaning into telling stories about our people, about the diaspora, facilitating conversations on the podcast about our community and all the incredible things that we have to share, that we've hidden for so long, that we want told about us. And I am really excited to be here today with all of you.
Okay, now I'm really not sure how to follow up either of those. My intro was very short in comparison. Hi, everybody. My name is Ravjot Mahek Singh. I am a filmmaker and art activist. I am also a queer Sikh woman, so I think that's really important to speak about here today, too. Right now I am the video producer for the digital media of Mayor Wu in Boston. So all the viral clips that you see of her, that's our work. And before that, I was a producer at the Boston Globe, and I've also produced for PBS. Most of my work has to do with documentary films, so I've worked with a lot of incredible marginalized communities and just vulnerable people over the years, and I think I'd like to say that I use a lot of my own personal experiences just growing up in post 9/11 America as well to like connect to a lot of these groups. So I've worked on films with Afghan refugees, with the Sikh community, of course, with the queer community, disabled community, and so many more. And then I'm also a curator. So the exhibit outside, it's called Azadi, which means freedom. And so I've also curated that. So please feel free to check it out. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey y'all, my name is Sundari the Indian Goddess, hailing from Guyana, from the Caribbean. Proud to be here representing our Indo-Caribbean community this afternoon. And speaking on that, my background, I come from a Muslim family, and navigating that background into cultural background in dance platform, and then being outed has been a struggle. Being able to navigate the differences or the similarities between our South Asian community and our Indo-Caribbean community through indentureship, understanding indentureship, and teaching that now through art, using art to do that, especially in our school system, teaching the children and the educators who are teaching our children about our culture, ensuring that they understand where their family comes from and not just the American community, right? But understanding who you are as a person. And that was something that I had to learn for myself in understanding who I am first. But I also learned that when you live your life freely, authentically, the world gets to see that. And sometimes they see that before you. So we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's so important. As we're living in a time where books are being banned and our history is literally being erased, I think it is so important. Our stories aren't even really being told, right? Like, we don't actually know when we came here, right? Different parts of the diaspora don't know how we came to America and what that history looks like because it's not really written about. Before we get into some of like the more controversial ways of talking about storytelling, I want to kind of go into, because I think, well, actually I want to know how many people here identify as storytellers. How many here, okay. How many are creators? Okay. And how many are authors? Filmmakers, authors, okay, quite a few. And I think, so I love to always know, you know, I'm an entrepreneur, I've built companies, and one of the most important things that I incorporate into building anything is the why. Why am I creating this company and for who? And so I really would love, I know you guys have touched a little bit upon this, but I want to dig deeper into like, what was a moment where you were like, yeah, you know, you had a child and you wanted to like, you know, yes, romance stories, but what was that one instance where you're like, this is what I have to do and I'm going to follow through? Because writing a children's book or writing anything or creating a film, just everything you're doing even now, Sundari, the existence of Sundari, like what compelled you to say, I'm going to get up and do this? Because I think like a lot of people sit here and say like, yeah, I have a story to tell, but what compels you to say, I'm going to get up and do it? And so what was that why for you guys?
Yeah, I'll go first, sure. For me, it was seeing our trans community not being visible. Seeing our trans community having to face hate, having to face discrimination, homophobia, transphobia, anti-blackness within our community, and seeing them being shunned from their own home. And then while I don't consider myself trans, I consider myself as a non-binary artist and as a drag queen. That came to life vividly for me when Sundari was born in Richmond Hill, Queens. And back then we had very small number of drag entertainers who were South Asian and Indo-Caribbean or even Caribbean. And many of these individuals are so talented, but it reminded me of when art and dance was abolished in India, where our artistic platforms as drag artists and trans artists had to be dissolved or hide and shun and be under the rug and be performing like the bottom house, we call it in Guyana, right? Like we're considered the bottom house dancers. But no, we are visible. We belong in the homes. We belong on the stages. We belong on the streets. We belong here. That was the moment for me. And that, at that point in time, it gave me so much life to see that there are more others that we can inspire. Today, many of you have probably heard of Malai.
Yeah.
Right? How many of you have heard of Malai?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Malai saw me for the first, she was not a drag queen at the time. And she saw me when we heard 377 was struck down in India. I did a podcast and I did an interview on that. Malai was in the audience. And from that moment in time, it struck her to be a drag queen. And today she is a thriving drag
She
queen in
sure
our
is.
community. And that's just one example. And even though I'm Indo-Caribbean, it touched a South Asian drag queen to create who she is today. And we get to do that not just in New York City, not just in Queens, but right here in DC. Right here in DC and around the world.
Sundari, I love what you're saying because it really is this idea of belonging. We belong. And then about also when I belong and I show you I belong, maybe you also feel like you do too. And so I never thought I'd write a children's book. I thought I would be a real person and write for adults. But I mean, you know, but that's just not what happened. I was a journalism major. I have written all the things, all the places. And it wasn't until I had a little girl and I wanted to get a book where the character on the cover kind of looked like her that I realized that the book didn't exist. There was no book where the girl was a little sick girl with 2 long braids and the dad had a turban. It didn't exist. The end. And so then you're faced with a choice. Does that child belong? Does her mother belong? Does her father belong? Do we all belong? And we do. And when the need is in your own home, man, you feel that so deeply. And so I wrote the book and I just wrote it for her. It was just like, I wrote it on my computer, I wrote it on my phone, I read it to her, she liked it, and that was the beginning and the end of the story because I checked the box. The girl was happy, right? Satya felt great, I felt great, I moved on. But the more I read this to her and her friends would come over, I'd read it to them, I realized that there was a lot of other kids who needed this book too. That book is turned into 10 other books. They're in Target, they're bestsellers and all the jazz. But the best thing that happens is I don't know Ravjot and I get a DM ages ago and she says, I saw this book at Target. I've never seen myself in a book before. That's why we do it.
Right? Like you've
Well,
never
that-
seen yourself at Target. Like I just recently went to a Home Goods and there was Diwali. There was like Diwali stuff and I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna take this all up.
Right.
Some of it was overpriced, but then I was like, oh, you know, but whatever. But whatever. But then we're never gonna be seen. So if we don't buy, because we do have purchasing power. So if we don't buy each other's book, like I buy your book and I gift it to everybody. I'm like, I don't care what race you are, you need to learn about Diwali. Like you said earlier when we were talking about our panel, she was like, there's 50 books about Christmas, so why can't there be 50 about Diwali?
Like it's gonna be fine,
Yeah.
right? Your version of it will be different than mine, so write that one too.
Yeah.
I want to go based off of this actually because I do want to say real quick that seeing this book in Target, it was Hair Twins. I had never seen a book about like a sick daughter and a sick father written so beautifully before, and I was already like 28 years old when I saw this. And so I think I DM'd you like 2-ish years ago, I don't know, 3 years ago. But yeah, it changed my life even at 28. I was like, wait, what? Like this is crazy. And I couldn't believe it. So I quickly looked at the back page and I was like, who is the author? And I was like, I simply must reach out to this author. But it ties into a lot to my story too, because just to be honest with you, like I was around 5 or 6 when 9/11 happened, and for a lot of Sikh people, a lot of Muslim people, a lot of people in general, brown people, it was incredibly traumatic. And I grew up in this horrendous little town, closed-minded town in Waterford, Connecticut. And it was extremely racist. I was also one of the first queer people out in my school. And I was also outed in a really wrong and unfortunate way. And so all of these things, like, thank you. I just grew up knowing that if I don't put something out there in the media, in mass media, in front of people, they're just gonna keep seeing the same images of people who look like my dad, people who have turbans and beards, right? And they're gonna see that and always assume that it means that they're terrorists. They're gonna correlate those two things. So for me, that was a huge part of my journey. Is like, my dad's not a terrorist, I'm not a terrorist. Like, we're all regular people. So I really just stepped into this because I simply knew that something has to change. And back then, that was a long time ago. I'm super old, but things have changed. Listen, things have changed since then. Luckily, things have changed. We definitely have a lot more representation now, but back then there was none. Like zero. That wasn't negative. So a lot of those stereotypes are the reason that I went into documentary and truth seeking and doing it in like a really ethical and powerful way and an inclusive way. So yeah.
I think that I've, much like everybody else here, I've had really interesting experiences across just, or similar experiences. The first young adult South Asian character book that made it big, many of you might remember, was called Born Confused, and it was by Tanuja Desai Haidie. So I was 15 when that book came out, and I remember being like, there's nothing else like this out there. And at the time, I'm now 38, I'll own it, and it's stuck with me. She's actually now become a friend, and we are all in this for the same reason. It's the fact that we didn't see ourselves. And another thing for me, writing kind of rom-coms and writing these middle grade stories, is that many of our stories portray us either as victims or come from places of our trauma. And romance in particular, not only is it the best-selling genre of any book, like Barnes & Noble doesn't give it its own bookshelf for shits and giggles. It's because it's the best-selling genre out there. The fact is that we don't get to hear stories of joy and guaranteed happy endings for all of us. And so I know that a lot of the South Asian writers who write romance come from the spaces where they want to make sure that we are seen for our joy and not just the heartbreak. And that we don't just make headlines for the tragedies that happen within our communities or the stories where we have to be forced to survive, but rather maybe have some stories of pain, but always end up on the right side. And that eventually opened up stories of all the shades of gray that we have. So, writing about something as, now I look back and I'm like, oh, baby author me was really stuck to some pretty simple tropes in terms of falling in love was a big deal. Okay. But then you get messages from some people who say this is a really outdated experience. Then you have other messages that say this is exactly my experience. And when you get that, you realize your whole community is obviously across the spectrum in terms of all the different divides that we have within the South Asian community itself, right? We're all different backgrounds, religions, castes, all of these things, all of these systems are interrelated. So from there, that started the podcast, which is my other storytelling platform that Desi Spark ran for 5 years with me and my co-host Nehal at the helm before we sold it last year. And we spoke about social justice, and we started to learn about communities in our own, and we got to facilitate conversations that didn't star us, but got to star other people that had really important things to say that our community still needed to hear and they needed to heal from. So I think the seed that planted it all was, I didn't see myself. And then what came from that was, there's so many shades of brown here, and there's so many kinds of stories that need to be told. And even if I'm not the one who's telling all of them, I can facilitate those stories being told, which I think is a really huge part of being a storyteller in the first place, is recognizing when other stories deserve the spotlight and to be able to give that to them.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Ravjot, I want to talk a little bit about documentaries, and I think some of you can actually chime in on this, but you were talking about you talk very specifically about your title, that you're a documentary filmmaker and an activist, and how you've married the two. Can you dive a little bit into what you see happening and how you're challenging that industry today? You don't just go in as a predator, you go in and you immerse yourself into that community that you're trying to tell the story on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I'm really glad you asked that, because I do think that documentary filmmaking, especially the way that it's become mainstream today, a lot of the stuff that you see on Netflix, for example, it is predatory and exploitive at its core, and I think you can even feel that sometimes when you're watching it. Not always, but there are some films, for example, I think there's a big difference between being a documentary filmmaker, and that's your job, and that's what you do, and then you make the film, and then you leave, and then there's a big difference between calling yourself an art activist. So here at this panel, we're talking about art activism, and for me, it's you got to put the activism before the art. Let's say in the case of documentary, right? There's a lot of popular cases, whether it's in photography or videography, where there have been like disasters happening, inhumane disasters happening, and you see this cameraman rolling. Do you think that's okay? And maybe as a documentary filmmaker, if that's all you want to say that your job is, maybe that's okay. Sure, you're capturing the truth. That also has a space in activism, right? But like if you're calling yourself and touting yourself as an activist, then you got to put that camera down. Like, what are you doing when the camera is off? I think that is more important, especially as as an activist first, and then a documentarian. So for me, it's like there's a lot of different ways that you can give back to your communities. I'll give you the example. I've been working with the Afghan community for a really long time. They came here as refugees in 2021 after the United States withdrew from Afghanistan. And so at that time, I started a documentary for them. And then I quickly realized like this community needs a lot more than just their stories to be out there. That's a really big portion of what they need, but they also need financial aid. And they also need, more education beyond just the film realm. Like they literally need assistance to be integrated into schools and jobs. And so I've been doing a lot of that. So not only was it a film itself, but I helped them organize protests. And I was at the front of that, making sure that everything was safe, hiring marshals to keep us safe. I also do a lot of job placement work with them, even today. I'm still in touch with like a pretty large community of families all across Boston that really need help being placed in jobs. And luckily I'm in the position to do that.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a lot of other things beyond financial. And also making sure that your films, if they are profiting, go back to
Yeah.
the communities if you can.
Well, I love that. Like you're marrying the art with beyond, right? What happens to a community after the story has been told and whatnot. Can we talk a little bit about like what harmful narratives about South Asian communities you feel, all of you feel most compelled to challenge right now?
I think there's so many actually. There's so many.
What's your top one? What's your favorite one right now?
There's
so many.
My favorite one is thinking that we're the only Indians. And while we're not. And understanding what just that word just literally means. And knowing how to categorize ourselves. And putting ourselves in categories. Do we really want to be in a category? Right? Or are we supposed to be living freely? Right? Without judgment, without a category. Why can't we just be human? Right? And I think that's for me is a big one because that brings back to me my identity as Indo-Caribbean, which comes back to me being also Indian, right? Not necessarily South Asian, but Caribbean with a background of ancestry of India. And I think that's a big part of where I always create a lot of my work to bridge that gap. And you talked about exactly what I'm thinking in my head is you got to be the activist first and then bring your art with that. And I think, yeah.
I think for me, it's this idea of what excellence looks like. And that excellence is the college you went to, excellence is the job you have, or excellence is the kind of apartment or home you have. And for my parents, I think that might have been real. The college I went to meant that they did a good job. And the house that we lived in meant that they did a good job. But now when I look at my own family, I think that excellence feels and looks different. I think that my daughter and I have the freedom to make excellent choices for ourselves. I think we have the ability to be excellent in the way we take care of ourselves, something my mom never did. And I think that this idea of excellence for me is something I really think about a lot. And it's why I spend a lot of time writing the kinds of stories I do for our children, where the excellence sometimes is the joy. It is just being with each other and being like, wow, this is kind of great. We're having a good time. We are a loving family. Our happiness is intact. That is excellent.
And that's enough.
And that's more than enough. And so for me, it is also fighting that urge to be, when that girl comes home from school being like, so how'd you do? Right? Because it's built in. It's built in. And instead, I have had to train myself to be like, so how you feel? It's small changes like that I really do feel like deconstruct so many of these harmful tropes.
I just got, so we're in New York, and my older son is 9, and we just got his test results from his state test, and I literally just had the same thing where I was like, you did okay.
Yeah.
Shit. Like, I was, like, how many people's parents said, like, oh, where are the extra 5 points? You got a 95, like, or where's the extra credit? You got 100, but why didn't you ask for extra credit?
Correct.
And it's funny because we are, like, while you tell your stories, all of you, you're also reframing the stories that you've built, right? And and for Annika, you have people telling you, like, well, that's outdated. Well, that was a truth at that point when I wrote that story, and you have to honor that truth for what it was then. But also, like, everyone's stories are different, and it's okay. Like, my story is not for everyone here to read. You're writing it for a certain demographic and person. What are some of the challenges that you're up against?
I think the first thing is, it's actually kind of indicative of what you were saying, Raki, is like, my favorite question that I've ever been asked when I was at a speaking event, I was speaking to a number of students who was actually in India, in Hyderabad, where I'm from, and they're all like engineers and students from under-resourced and underprivileged backgrounds, and they're in a thought group to help them sort of climb out of the SES that they're in. And their advisor, who's based here, was like, how come you write romance instead of something serious? And my eyeballs, like, it fell out of my head. I was like, oh God, how do I answer this? My dad was actually on the call too, because he knew the advisor. And I remember the smirk that he gave was just like, oh, you unleashed something now. And, but I got to tell, and I remember he said later, he was really proud of my answer, was that, I think that we have this concept that we're not serious if we're not doing other things. We've all grown up with this, right? Like I have a healthcare background. I know this too. We have a tendency to judge one another. And I think the other thing that comes up a lot is what I touched on before, that Raki's also touched on, and Deepti's touched on, this whole concept of, like, there can only be one. There can only be one bestseller. There can only be one Lily or Mindy, and other than that, we can't. We should probably just throw our support behind them, but we shouldn't necessarily change the pipeline to get the rest of us up there, or open these doors. And that natural sort of mindset that our parents had to take on for sheer survival in this country is still carried in us, and it's very much something that we either need to actively fight against to get every single person at the table, or it's something that we have to just be like, all right, fine, like, we're going to be happy with those 3 people up there, and then we're going to sit there and we're going to bitch about the fact that they didn't tell us our stories. Like, well, what are we going to do about that? How are we going to change that? And I think that that's a huge part of being a storyteller in the first place, is constantly recognizing, like, these stories, these people, right. We all look different. We all tell the same story differently. No story has ever gone with, like every story is a repeat of another story. They're just different versions of the same one. And that different version still resonates equally as hard with the people that it's meant to find. So, and I think that in romance is true. Not everybody has an arranged marriage that fails. Not everybody has a love marriage that works. Not everybody has the reverse situation in all of those things. Not everyone has a broken family. Not everyone has a together family. And I think that, portraying those shades of gray is something that we're still fighting against in the publishing industry. You know this. But it's also something that we're fighting in every industry to show the beauty in all of that, and in just the different kinds of ways that our stories present themselves. And so that's been a huge challenge, as well as trying to overcome that from the actual business side of things, getting our stories told and sold. When I was doing the podcast, we interviewed a number of different producers and actors and people who are actually in entertainment who were talking about how they were trying to get these pipelines sold, and they would make it all the way to the rooms of these producers, these high-powered execs, to greenlight their projects, and they would be like, they don't fall within these tropes that we're used to, so we're not going to give you the power to do that. And in order to change that, you have to change the pipeline of the people that are in publishing, of the people that are in film, of the people that are saying yes, or have the power to say yes. And for that to happen, we need to be able to encourage creativity. We need to encourage the people to become the romance writer if they're good at it. We need to encourage the kids that, becoming a doctor is not the only form of excellence. But if you become a doctor, just be a good one.
Or don't go to college.
Or don't go to college.
Yeah.
Or,
That's what I'm telling my kids. Like, go start a business, make some money.
yeah, like do what you're good at doing, and I think that that's part of all of this. And to keep our stories going, we have to be willing to push the envelope ourselves in terms of how we approach how those stories are told and who gets to tell them.
One of the, I was talking to an actor from Deli Boys. How many of you guys have watched Deli Boys? So I went up to one of the actors. I was at a conference similar to this one, and I was like, I'm so sorry, like, I haven't watched it. And he just gave me a dead stare. And I felt so terrible. And I was like, I just don't have Hulu. He's like, it's $6 a month. Sign up right now. Right now. And I was like, oh shit, I guess I'm going to have to do this. But I was like, I have to talk to my husband. We make these decisions together. And he was like, it's $6 a month. Do this right now. The whole point of that story is that we have to buy each other's work, right? We have to watch each other's work. And he literally, that is the truth, right? So like everyone here, whether you're celebrating Eid, Diwali, Christmas, whatever holidays you've got going up, like everyone here has a documentary or a piece of art or a dance show or, like a book. Like these are things that if we don't watch, and it was funny, he was like, I don't even care if you're watching it. He's like, just put it on play and let it repeat.
God, I got Hulu for Purna.
Yeah, because
That's why I got it.
Yeah, and they said,
And I was like, you should have sent me Hulu.
yeah.
But I got it for her.
I got it, right? So everybody, like, that. The whole point is that, like, there's going to be an interesting, like, reaction to this. I think a lot of we came to this country, and a lot of times our parents strived for whiteness.
Totally.
Right? I'm going to put that out there.
Yes.
Let's strive for our brown identities, right? Let's strive for our, we don't need to be like in close proximity to whiteness to be to be seen, right? But what we need to do is follow each other more, encourage each other more, empower each other, watch each other's things, even if you don't like it, right? I don't care if you don't like romance novels. I don't care if you have children. Donate books to a school about Diwali, like in a neighborhood that doesn't know about it, right? Like, why don't we find interesting in other ways? Like, I may not be a big romance novel person, but you know what? Like, maybe I need to be, or maybe I can give it to a friend, and like all those things.
And to that point, spending power is power. We get all that stuff. There are free ways to help people out too. Just share their shit. Yeah. Share it with your friends. Tell other people. Get the book. All you gotta just put a little request in with your library. This goes a long way. It signals to the world that you want it, and we should keep doing it. Yeah. And that really matters.
So I'd love for you guys to touch upon like collaboration and partnerships. Like obviously like here we're asking everyone to, just tap into obviously all of you, but into our community as a whole. We need to break past this like, oh, I want to be like him. Yeah, I want to be like them, and it's these people. I want to be like more of our community, more inclusive, more connected. I don't want to think about caste. I want to think about how we break away from these systems that are oppressive. So in your own ways, how have you thought about partnerships and collaborations, and how have you really celebrated that in your work?
I'll start with that. I think, I know. I'm gonna correct that mentality. We gotta know it, right? It's not about thinking it, it's about knowing it. And a lot of my work from performing have come with collaborative work. Collaborating in connecting Indo-Caribbean art, South Asian art, Caribbean art, collaborating that together, show the unity. What does that do? That connects 3 different demographics together, that people can now see themselves in your art. But you have to identify with that first. If you don't know your identity, if you don't know your art, you don't know your platform, find out what it is. Find out what you're passionate about. And then collaborate with individuals that values you. Not your art first, or your creative work first. They value you first as a person. Because once they value you as a person, they're gonna love your art. They're gonna connect to it. They're gonna share it freely for you and support you. And you're gonna bring more network, right? So find out what you're passionate about first. For me, it was dance. dance has been that platform for me since I was a kid in Guyana, seeing my dad dancing and the joy that was on his face, right? And his mom's face, rest in peace, Aji. But that joy, I still have that joy today in all of my art platform. And many times people are gonna ask, do you ever sleep? Where do you get the energy from? And I tell people, it took my mother and my father a lot of energy to make me, and I continue that energy today, right? So I tell you, find collaborative individuals and art and platforms that connects with your work. And connect with those people, because they're gonna book you, they're gonna value you, they're gonna put money back into your pockets, they're gonna share all of your stuff. And the next thing you know, you're here in Washington. And we're educating others. Make sense?
I think there's something also about finding those intersectional spaces, right? Where I love the brown space, you know that, that's my favorite space. It's my most comfortable space. But there's something about the intersectionalities of where we can connect that I think the real collaboration happens. And so I was telling you earlier, I'm on the board of Drag Story Hour. Drag Story Hour is where the most amazing drag queens read books to kids in libraries, in schools. It is a nonprofit. They do this work because it is incredibly important when a drag queen shows up in a library and all those kids sit there and they think, damn, not only is this fun, not only is she beautiful, but I belong here with her too. Right? And so I think finding these spaces where our art meets each other's art, and we think, okay, now what can we do together? And so I like to really think about, yes, I am an Indian American person, a South Asian person, a woman, but I'm so many other things, and so are you. And I think meeting each other in those spaces is incredibly powerful.
I will keep mine short because I think you two really, really expressed it well. But I will say intersectionality is abundant and we all contain multitudes. And art is a bridging connection point between so many, if not every topic out there. So I really do think that there's a lot of unique ways to uplift each other's voices and make new things. Like if I hadn't have thought of arts and just in my personal journey either as like an explorative collaboration point, I probably would have never gone into the fine arts because I was only ever viewing myself as like a filmmaker, right? Totally. But it was unlearning a lot of these rigid boxes that we live in and then just exploring new ideas and seeing like what can happen if you get your hands on some fabric and you get some, wise people in the arts to show you some paths forward. So it really does unlock like a lot of potential for it, and it's possible.
Not everything is prime time. Not everything is like ready for prime time. I write a lot of stuff. I'm sure you work on a lot of stuff that I don't show anybody. It's just not that good, but it's a lot of fun to make. And so you kind of just do that work, do the creative work anytime.
Go. Okay. I want to end with a treat for everyone that is in the room and have Sundari. I was like, you're looking at me. You're still performing. I'm like, I'm using my 1 minute for you. But how many of you would like to see Sundari perform?
Yes!
That's what I thought.
Good job.
All right, we can start that track. It's okay. And DJ, let's play that track while I take this shoe off real quick. Ooh. Oh, sorry.
Don't worry.
We got it. We could play the track. You could go ahead. And while she gets that track together, I do want to leave you with one thing, is that believe in yourself as this comes up. It's just as music. Believe in yourself, believe in your art, believe in your creativity, because no one will believe it if you don't, right? And many of you are probably going to hear this song.
Yes!
So many of you, how many of you knew the first song?
I do it.
From Hum Aapke Hai Kaun, right? And the performers in that song, in the video, in the movie, remember that they were hijras.
Yeah.
Remember that they were hijras, right? Hijra is the third gender in India. Remember that. And today we also represent that here in DC, right? The second song you heard is predominantly Indo-Caribbean from Suriname, right? Which is a chutney style of song. The language is Bhojpuri.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.